Global National with Dawna Friesen, reporting tonight from London.
God save the King! God save the King!
There is no mistaking this moment. King Charles III crowned in a sumptuous, seamless ceremony in the soaring nave of Westminster Abbey, a fusion of medieval and modern.
I come not to be served, but to serve.
Queen Camilla crowned too in the same abbey where coronations have taken place since 1066. A diverse range of more than 2,000 guests, from celebrities to presidents to volunteers and community workers. Canada's Prime Minister was there too, and carrying the flag, astronaut Jeremy Hansen. There was fanfare from trumpets and a procession back to the palace in the gold state coach. Only then, from the balcony, could the King and Queen fully see the sea of people who had stood for hours in the rain to witness this moment in history. Good evening and thanks for joining us. The long arc of history of the monarchy, the medieval traditions, the swords, the crowns, the robes, the oaths, they were all on full display. It may seem a bit out of place in 2023, but it's a kind of spectacular event the British royals are known for. Our Crystal Goomansingh was out in the crowds and the rain soaking up the atmosphere. Crystal.
Yeah, it pretty much rained the entire day, Dawna, but it really didn't change anyone's expectations of the day. Everyone just seemed to be out there hoping to make some memories.
I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, and faith and truth I will bear unto you, as your liege man of life and limb. So help me God.
A pledge to his king, a kiss for his father, and a thank you whispered in return. The coronation of the king may focus on one family, but it was a bonding moment for many.
Yeah, family moment, history in the making. Live history. I'd like for one day for them to say, yeah, I was at the coronation with my dad back in whenever.
The service made history in a number of ways.
God of compassion and mercy.
Never before have we heard the sovereign pray out loud, and never before have non-Christian leaders taken part. Some moments were still too sacred to share. The Archbishop of Canterbury anointed the king on his head, chest, and hands, away from peering eyes. But there was no hiding the family drama. His brother, Prince Andrew, did not play any official role, but attended wearing the Order of the Garter, the oldest and most senior order of chivalry in the UK. And Prince Harry walked into Westminster Abbey alone. Meanwhile, the woman he called a villain in his book is now Queen. Diane Brereton got emotional out along the Mall talking about the coronation, recalling her grandfather's role in the last king's coronation.
He was selected as a colour sergeant to march in the king's coronation. That would be King George V in 1911. And here is his, this is his invitation. Colour Staff Sergeant John Mills, 36 Peel Regiment. I'm getting tearful now. I'm just thinking, that's my grandfather right there. So here I am, 112 years later, you know, not marching in it, but being here for the coronation, and it just means the world to me.
Canadians have a long history in coronations. That tradition was on display again as 5 RCMP riders were featured prominently on horses given to the royals by Canada. While the pageantry was breathtaking, it was the crowning of the king that captivated this crowd at an overflow screening location and brought them to their feet.
Well, the king swore an oath to uphold the laws of the land, but tonight it's the actions of police that are in question. Earlier in the day, a number of individuals were arrested, including the head of the anti-monarchy organization Republic. 51 others were also taken into custody. Police officers saying that preventing a disruption was more important than an individual's right to protest. I spoke with Graham Smith earlier in the week, and he said police were well aware aware of the group's plans to demonstrate at Trafalgar Square and didn't raise any concerns. And Dawna, tonight, it's unclear if any of those individuals are actually going to be formally charged.
Lots of questions about that. Crystal Goomansingh, thank you. Astronaut Jeremy Hansen was asked to lead the Canadian procession into the Abbey today, carrying the Canadian flag. He came up here to the rooftop right after the ceremony and told me he'd never been to Westminster Abbey before.
It's a bit surreal. There's a lot of history, and you just feel that. I would find it hard to find the words to describe it, but it's one of those things where you're sitting in the moment, you're like, wow, you're just impressed. And there aren't really words to describe that emotion inside, but I was sitting like right there, and the King and the Queen were just on the other side of the wall. I was sat behind, and it felt monumental for me. Yeah, really something. And carrying the flag right through between the thrones and past all of that, and the altar and the Last Supper on the wall. I mean, that was quite an honor just to walk through there.
The former National Chief of the Assembly First Nations is here in London, too. Perry Bellegarde didn't go to the coronation, but he does have immense respect for the King. You'll hear why a little later. But first, we turn to Alberta, where wildfires are continuing to force thousands of people from their homes. More than 24,000 people have had to evacuate across that province. 5,000 others have been told to leave at a moment's notice. There are more than 100 active wildfires in Alberta right now. 32 are out of control. 45 of them started since 11 a.m. yesterday. One of the hardest hit communities is Fox Lake, where more than 3,500 people have been forced to flee their homes. Our Neetu Garcha is in High Level, Alberta, where evacuees are taking shelter. Neetu, is there any word on people when they might be able to return home?
Yeah, Dawna, at this point, it sounds like it could be weeks before residents can return to the community of Fox Lake, but there is some good news tonight. Little Red River Cree Nation confirms the few people who had been reported missing have been accounted for and are safe. Helicopter and ground crews are focusing their efforts on preventing the extremely active wildfire near Fox Lake from spreading any further into the community. Little Red River Cree Nation says more than 40 homes have already been destroyed, with little chance of the more than 3,500 evacuees returning home anytime soon.
Based on the work entails, it might be maybe a couple weeks, but we do have rapid deployment water systems in place.
West of Edmonton, dozens of new and growing wildfires have forced several thousand people to evacuate, including all of Drayton Valley on Thursday, a town of about 7,000 people. On Friday, large swaths of Yellowhead County and the entire town of Edson, which has a population of about 8,000 people, were forced to flee, and thousands more from the town of Fox Creek were handed evacuation orders on Saturday.
Heart was pounding for sure when we were driving out, but thank God that we got home. Like my crew and I got home safe to our families.
It's crazy. Who would have ever thought that, most of northern Alberta was going to be in this situation?
Provincial officials say the situation is evolving rapidly.
With so much kindling, all it takes is a few sparks to ignite some truly frightening wildfires. These conditions have resulted in the unprecedented situation our province is facing today.
Back in Fox Lake, which is only accessible by barge, the chief highlighted the need for provincial highway upgrades.
I think if we had the appropriate infrastructure in northern Alberta, especially in and coming into our communities, I think we would have been a little faster getting people out.
With no relief from Mother Nature, the hot, dry conditions across Alberta have prompted a province-wide fire ban. Here in High Level, which is about 2 hours from Fox Lake, you can see smoke and haze blanketing the region. And while it's a little calmer here in the area around the wildfire, winds have been consistent and strong, and fire officials say that remains one of the biggest challenges in the firefight tonight. Dawna?
Okay, Neetu Garcha in High Level, Alberta. Thank you. Wildfires are also threatening communities in neighboring BC. In the village of McBride, which declared a state of emergency, residents face immediate evacuation orders because of the out-of-control Tear Lake fire. Officials say high winds have made things worse there, too. And further north, residents in the Red Creek and Lower Cache areas are also under evacuation orders as a more than 1,500-hectare fire grows. A look back at a life in waiting. Coming up, we revisit the King's decades-long journey to the throne. This was the view from the sky as Britain's famous Red Arrows flew over Buckingham Palace earlier today. Quite a sight. We're back from London in a moment. Before today's coronation, King Charles was both the oldest and the longest-serving heir apparent in British history. He'd held the title of Prince of Wales since 1958 and inherited the title of Duke of Edinburgh when his father, Prince Philip, died in 2021. Eric Sorensen looks back at the King's long road to the throne.
Elizabeth proudly presented Prince Charlie to the world.
He was born to be king, unlike his mother, who became the heir apparent only when her uncle abdicated.
The crowds surged forward to get closer views of their own first family.
By the time of Elizabeth's coronation, 4-year-old Charles was already being groomed for the throne.
Prince Charles proudly presenting his many school friends.
Charles was the first heir to the British crown to go to school. His mother had been tutored privately. He was the first to earn a college degree, an accomplished horseman, a naval officer, an early advocate for the environment. But always, he was preparing to be king, which imposed stiff constraints on a reserved young man.
The level of freedom he experienced was significantly less. The kind of education he was expected to receive, the social circles he could have.
The expectations upon him meant his early romance with Camilla Parker Bowles was deemed unsuitable. She was, among other things, considered a commoner. The royal family was, however, quite enamored of Lady Diana Spencer, the daughter of an earl, even though she was a teenager almost 13 years younger than Charles.
I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on.
And I suppose in love.
Of course. Whatever in love means.
Their wedding was the social event of the century. Diana produced an heir and then a spare. But there was unhappiness. Charles kept up a hidden friendship with Camilla, and in the new era of intrusive mass media, Charles and Diana's troubles were exposed for all to see.
The Princess of Wales suspected that her husband never really renounced his attachment to his great friend.
The marriage broke up, and when Diana died in a car accident, public esteem for Charles and the royal family sunk to a new low. And so began the laborious task of rehabilitating his relationship with the public and laying the groundwork for his future. Charles made it clear that Camilla would be by his side. She doesn't bring the sparkle that Diana did, but does provide loving and trusted support.
She had made Charles extremely happy. Her main aim is to help him, to support him. And she's been loyal to him for so long.
Charles' devotion to duty is a quality he shared with his late mother, but his education and passion for issues like the environment have prepared him with a more outspoken view of the world.
As I've tried to indicate for quite some time, the climate crisis really is a genuine emergency, and tackling it is utterly essential.
Charles must also tackle new family dynamics, primarily with his boys, William, the constitutional heir to the throne, and Harry, now very much an outsider. Still, his larger role will be on the world stage, starting with the Commonwealth and its colonial history. Canada's attachment to the monarchy will certainly be tested.
He faces unique challenges as King of Canada. The nature of Indigenous reconciliation, a nation of many people, many languages. Charles is really confronted with the reality of showing people why the monarchy is relevant.
Some view Charles' reign as a placeholder between Elizabeth and William, both more popular than he. But for now, it is his dynasty and his kingdom. An apprentice and a prince for more than 70 years, Charles III is as prepared to be king as any monarch in history. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
Still ahead, some insight into how the king views Crown-Indigenous relations. This is South African singer Pretty Yende, who became the first African to sing solo at a British coronation. We're back from London in a moment. For many Indigenous people in Canada, trying to deepen ties with the monarchy is complicated given the history of colonialism. But some leaders, like Perry Bellegarde, believe King Charles plays a vital role in progress for reconciliation. The former national chief of the Assembly of First Nations was here in London. He didn't go to the coronation. He's an honorary president of the Royal Canadian Geographic Society, though, and he's worked with the King on climate initiatives. I spoke with him earlier. So I read what you wrote recently. I saw it in the Regina Leader Post.
The op-ed?
Yeah, the op-ed. You believe that King Charles should be commended. Why do you feel that way?
Well, for a number of things. I think he's way ahead of his time. And what I mean by that, he's been talking about protecting the land and water for over 50 plus years. And a lot of people thought he was crazy 40, 50 years ago, talking to plants and figuring out how everything works together. And I say he's way ahead of us, and he's a leader ahead of his time because of that. He's recently created two very key initiatives. One's called the Terra Carta, and the other one is the Sustainable Markets Initiative, the SMI.
And you're involved with the Sustainable Markets Initiative.
Yes, I am, yes.
And why is that? What is it that drew you to that?
Well, his invitation. His invitation to come and help, because he gets it that Indigenous knowledge and elders' traditional knowledge and getting our worldview inside the private sector and inside the public sector and balancing development and finding that really, really good balance between the environment and the economy. He gets that, and he asked for help on that 4 years ago, 2019. He invited my wife and I to Clarence House, his personal residence. Now he's king. He has the power to convene, and he has the power to bring people together.
What is the Sustainable Markets Initiative? What's its aim?
Its aim is to basically get corporations and companies and nation states and everybody else to put the planet first, nature first in their business planning models. You can quantify keeping the forest then as opposed to cutting it down because it captures carbon. You can quantify having clean streams and lakes and waters and clean oceans. And so the whole goal of the Sustainable Markets Initiative is to have sustainable development globally, which really means a sustainable future for our children and grandchildren and those yet unborn.
Which is in keeping with Indigenous values
and
teachings.
That's why we have a strong connection.
Right. And you first met him in 2001.
Yes.
What did you make of the man?
Well, again, we thought he was a very gifted individual, very down to earth, very warm, very caring, very interested in learning from our elders. He was really humbled when we blanketed him with a star blanket. And he was very humbled and touched when late Elder Gordon Oakes from Nikanit First Nation bestowed the name upon him.
Gave him a Cree name.
Gave him a Cree name. Kiskalpi Simoa Miu Kanawa Pamago in Cree. And in English, basically what it means is the sun watches over him in a good way. The sun protects him and watches over him in a good way.
And do you have hope with this king and the future of Indigenous relations with people in Canada?
Of course, there's no question. He's already made his trip to Canada in May when he was Prince of Wales, and he made a very strong, powerful statement up in the Northwest Territories about reconciliation and about listening to Indigenous peoples and learning from their stories, learning from the residential school history, learning from the Indian Act imposition, learning from that genocide and the colonization and all of that. And he also made strong statements about the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And that's really a roadmap for reconciliation, not only in Canada, but throughout the world, if nation states give it legal effect. And in Canada, they've done that. So I have great hope. To me, this monarch, this newly minted or newly crowned king gets it. He understands it. And there's no question, there's great hope for the future.
Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Next, some of the challenges facing King Charles. The 62-gun salute at the Tower of London marked the exact moment the St. Edward's crown was placed on the King's head at the coronation. We're back from London in a moment. It's now official. Charles is king and his reign begins in earnest. His mother, though, is a hard act to follow, and his biggest challenge is remaining relevant at a time when interest in the monarchy, especially among young people, is waning. Waving to his subjects from the balcony of the palace where he was born. The new king's whole life has been forged in a crucible. He could never escape his destiny.
I here present unto you King Charles, your undoubted king.
So what kind of king will he be? Those who've watched him closely believe he'll be a kind of gentle activist, using the monarch's power to convene.
That's the sort of power that monarchs have always had, to get people together and leave them to sort it out. But you can still
sort of moral authority to
it's okay, everyone. Look, here's a big issue. I can't officially take a position on this, but I've got so and so here and so and so here. Maybe you could sort of come to an agreement.
His challenges: a disgraced brother, an estranged son, and polls that show most young people are either ambivalent about the monarchy or actively dislike it.
I come not to be served, but to serve.
His coronation oath is to serve. His friends say the king does not want to be revered.
Receive this all.
He knows, to many, the monarchy is archaic.
I want to see an Australian as Australia's head of state.
Australia's Prime Minister hasn't set a time frame, but does want to cut ties with the monarchy.
That doesn't mean that you can not have respect for the institution, which is the system of government that we have.
Barbados has dropped the sovereign as head of state. 6 other Caribbean nations have signaled they'll follow suit. Even in Britain, the anti-monarchist movement is vocal. Not my king! Not my king! Some of them arrested today during the coronation procession.
The whole point of today from the Republican side was visibility, just to show that when the cameras panned around, that they wouldn't see just rows and rows of adoring loyalists, and to show the world that we're not a nation of monarchists.
As Shakespeare wrote, heavy is the head that wears the crown. That is Global National for this Saturday. I am Dawna Friesen. There were so many moments from the coronation. We want to leave you with a few more, including some behind-the-scenes moments from inside Buckingham Palace after the ceremony. For now, thanks for watching and good night from London.